The derelict ship hung in the void, like a corpse suspended in amber. Dralethian's clawed fingers flexed against the command console, the dark metal groaning under the pressure. His segmented armor plates, forged from the same industrial alloys as his warship, itched with anticipation. The scavenger fleet had been combing the debris fields of the Kasari expanse for weeks, harvesting the wreckage of forgotten battles. But this was different. The vessel was human. Scans complete, Commander. Vashdor rasped, his voice a grinding echo through the ship's comms. The scientist's ocular implants flickered with orange, red diagnostics as he studied the data. Designation, Kintsugi's Hope. Terran mining vessel. Hull integrity, surprisingly intact. Dralethian's mandibles twitched. Intact was an understatement. The ship was scarred, its once pristine plating now a patchwork of welded seams and carbon-scored armor. But it was whole. No breaches, no signs of catastrophic failure. Just the silent, drifting testament of a vessel that had endured something terrible and survived. Salvage protocols? Dralethian growled. Vashdor hesitated. Standard claim would apply, but... His voice trailed off as the sensors pulsed again. The Kintsugi's Hope was not dead. Deep within its skeletal frame, something stirred. A flicker of power, a whisper of systems rebooting. Then, the shields flared to life. Not the weak, sputtering barrier of a dying ship, not the faltering glow of emergency reserves. A shimmering, hexagonal lattice of energy snapped into existence around the derelict, so dense it warped the light around it. The Dralethian scanners screamed as they recoiled from the feedback. This wasn't just a shield, it was a fortress, a bastion. Dralethian's spines flattened against his back. Humans were supposed to be primitive, their technology crude, their ships fragile. The galactic consensus had dismissed them as reckless. Emotional creatures, too busy warring amongst themselves to pose a real threat. This was no accident. The Kintsugi's Hope hadn't just drifted here. It had returned, and its shields had come back online, with the quiet, terrifying certainty of something that had never truly been offline at all. Vashdor's voice was barely audible over the static. Commander, the energy signature. It's not just shielding. Dralethian already knew. The humans hadn't just reinforced their hull. Dead armored the void itself. And now something inside that ship was waking up. Section Fe. Receipts. Not debts. Jax Veld awoke to the sterile burn of alien antiseptics in his nostrils and the dull throb of a plasma burn along his ribs. His vision swam orange-red light. The hiss of pressurized vents, the too smooth hum of Dralethian machinery. His fingers twitched toward his sidearm before he remembered. It wasn't there. Again, the medbay walls curved like the inside of a forge, segmented metal plates glowing faintly with molten veins. A diagnostic array hovered over him, its spindly limbs ending in needle-tipped scanners. Had seen these before, in the wreckage of corporate black sites. Expensive. The kind of tech that left no witnesses. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Tall, spined, armored in overlapping plates of dark alloy. Dralethian, not pirates. Then, military Jax exhaled through his teeth and sat up. The motion sent fresh fire through his ribs, but he refused to let it show. You're awake. The Dralethian's voice was a grating bass, filtered through a vocal modulator. Your vessel's emergency beacon brought us here. You were adrift for 17 cycles. Jax ignored him, scanning the room. His gear was stacked neatly on a bench. His vac suit patched in 3 places with emergency sealant. His tool harness, stripped of anything sharp, and most importantly, the box. A reinforced alloy case, scratched and pitted from hard use, its surface still humming faintly with residual energy. Still here, good. You will explain. The Dralethian said, stepping closer, how a Terran mining barge survived a direct hit from a class Fey plasma lance. Jax rubbed his temple. His head pounded like a bad hangover. Trade secret. The alien's spines flexed. Your trade nearly tore a hole in subspace. Our engineers cannot replicate your shielding. It defies known physics. Jax smirked. Yeah, heard that before. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, testing his balance. Where's the rest of my crew? Deceased. A muscle in Jax's jaw twitched. Head known, of course. The Kintsugi's hope hadn't been built for combat, but hearing it still sent a cold spike through his gut. The Dralethian tilted its head. You do not grieve. Jax reached for his gear. Grief's a luxury. He pulled on his vac suit, the material stiff with dried coolant. Now, about my property. The alien's gaze flicked to the box. That device is a restricted weapon. Jax laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. That device is a shield, Fey modular defense array. And it's mine. He tapped the case. See that? Serial number, purchase order, even a warranty. He met the Dralethian's gaze. I've got receipts. For the first time, the alien hesitated. You bought this? Jax's grin didn't reach his eyes. More or less, the memory flashed. A corporate warlord's vault. Half lit by emergency flares. The shield, Fey humming in its cradle. The warlord hadn't been using it, just hoarding it. Like they all did, Jax had taken it. And then had taken the receipts too. The Dralethian's mandibles twitched. You expect us to believe a lone Terran miner acquired military-grade shielding legally? Jax stood, rolling his shoulders. Believe what you want, but that. He pointed at the box. That's proof humans don't just steal tech. He leaned in, voice dropping. We improve it. The Dralethian's spines bristled. Behind him, the med bay door slid open. Two more armored figures, weapons humming at low charge. Jax didn't move. The alien exhaled, a hiss of steam from its vents. You will come with us. Jax glanced at the shield. Fey then back at the Dralethian. Sure, he said, but my property comes too. The air crackled with tension somewhere. Deep in the ship, the Kintsugi's hope waited. Its shield still humming, its log still recording, and Jax Veld smiled. The Dralethian warship Iron Resolve was a fortress of brutalist efficiency. Its corridors lined with segmented plating that pulsed with molten, orange energy. Every surface bore the scars of industrial precision. No wasted space, no unnecessary curves, only the relentless geometry of war. Logistics Officer Kess, 3rd, rank of the Resolve Supply Division, had seen many things in her cycles of service. Smuggled weapons, black market fuel, even the occasional stowaway. She stared at the datapad in her clawed grip, the glow of the screen casting jagged shadows across her chitinous face. The human Jax Veld had not simply brought a stolen shield generator aboard. He had brought receipts, and not just any receipts. With cross-reference tax codes and corporate seals from no fewer than 17 Terran mining guilds. Kess' ocular implants flickered as she scrolled, parsing line after line of absurd human bureaucracy. Oxygen tax charged per breathable cubic meter, adjusted for planetary gravity variance gravity surcharge, applied to all non-Terran standard environments, voluntary hazard compensation, retroactively waived, then reinstated with interest. Her mandibles twitched in disbelief. The humans had turned survival into a ledger. Her claws froze mid-scroll. Buried beneath the mundane was something else. A transaction log, a weapons log, shield, Fey generator, serial fakes K, Fey procurement, salvage rights, Battle of Ceres Trench, see attached arbitration ruling. Kess' ventral plates tightened. The Battle of Ceres Trench was no mining dispute. It was a massacre. Corporate fleets had turned on each other over a lithium vein, and the humans had documented it all. Every breach of contract, every war crime, every shield generator repurposed from a dead man's hull. And this human, this miner, had the records. Across the chamber, Jax sat on an alloy bench, one knee bouncing idly. He looked relaxed, almost amused, but his eyes, sharp, calculating, never left the crate containing the shield. Faye Kess hissed through her vents. This was not theft. This was evidence. And if the humans had turned their own corporate wars into paperwork, what else had they buried in their ledgers? She closed the file. The iron resolve hummed around her, its reactors a distant growl. Somewhere in the depths of the ship, the shield. Faye waited, its logs still running, and Jax Veld kept smiling. Section Faye, Shield Wall Protocol. The iron resolve's command chamber thrummed with the low, molten pulse of Dralethian reactors, their heat signatures bleeding through the deck, plating like the slow burn of a forge. Kess' talons flexed against the data slate, the edges biting into her palm. The shield. Faye's logs weren't just records. They were a trap, meticulously laid. Across the chamber, Jax Veld leaned back, his posture loose, his fingers drumming an idle rhythm against his thigh. To the Dralethians, he looked like prey at ease, a fatal misread. Kess had seen that same casual tension in predators, waiting to strike. She opened the next file, and the universe tilted. Kinetic redistribution field, patent pending. The words glowed on the slate, followed by strings of Terran legalese, corporate seals, and most damning, a list of licensing fees. Kess' secondary eyelids flicked shut. This wasn't technology, it was commerce, the shield. Faye wasn't just absorbing fire, it was billing for it. Every impact, every joule of energy dispersed, was logged, catalogued, and invoiced to the attacker. The humans hadn't just weaponized physics, they'd weaponized contract law. Vashdor's cranial vents flared open, his copper-plated fingers twitching over his own display. This is impossible. Energy dissipation fields cannot be. Trademarked, Jax finished, grinning. His teeth were very white. Yeah, turns out they can. Kess' mind raced. The Varian fleets, their sudden retreats near Terran space, their hesitation to engage human outposts. It wasn't fear of firepower, it was fear of fees. The humans had turned warfare into a subscription service. Dralethian's massive frame loomed over the holodisplay, his armored carapace reflecting the orange glow of the shield. Face schematics. His voice was a grinding tectonic rumble. You expect us to believe your species copyrighted shield technology? Jax shrugged. Not just the tech, the application. He tapped the slate, pulling up a battle log from Ceres Trench. A Varian cruiser fired, its plasma lances striking a Terran freighter, and then the feed froze, zooming in on the shimmering barrier. On a cold, blustery energy redistribution detected. Penalty Faye Galactic Standard credits per incident. Repeat violations subject to litigation. The words scrolled across the screen in cheerful, blinking Terran script. Kess' vents locked. The freighter hadn't even fought back. It had just sent them a bill. Vashdor made a sound like a rupturing coolant line. This is insane. You cannot monetize combat. Jack's smile didn't waver. We just did. The chamber fell silent. The only sound the deep industrial throb of the iron resolves. Core Kess stared at the logs, the numbers ticking upward with every theoretical impact. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered their enemies on the battlefield. They'd outmaneuvered them in court. And Jax Veld, a lone miner with a crate full of receipts, had just proven the entire Dralethian military doctrine obsolete. Somewhere in the ship's depths, the shield, Faye hummed, its logs still running, still counting, still billing. Kess closed the file. The game had changed. Section. Faye. Corporate boardroom. War room. The molten core of the Dralethian command station pulsed like an exposed heart, casting jagged orange shadows across the reinforced obsidian table. Warlord Drax's claws left molten streaks in the alloy surface as he slammed the data. Slate down. the holographic invoice from the Iron Resolve flickering above it like a taunt. Theft of proprietary shielding technology, unauthorized replication. FAY, standard credits. Itemized per attached log. The words burned brighter than the plasma conduits, snaking through the chamber's ceiling. Across the table, legal overseer Vexus folded her segmented hands, her voice a controlled hiss of venting steam. Acknowledging this claim legitimizes their accusation of theft. Our entire RFAD division would be exposed. Her ocular implants flicked to the slate, and the Terrans have thorough documentation. Drax's secondary eyelids snapped shut. The humans hadn't just embedded tracking protocols in their tech. They'd weaponized accounting. Every failed boarding attempt, every shield impact, every millisecond of unauthorized system access had been logged, timestamped, and converted into a galactic invoice. The sheer bureaucratic brutality of it made his reactor core ache. Vexus tapped a claw against the table. Deniable salvage remains an option. The unspoken suggestion hung in the superheated air assassination. Draxus exhaled, a plume of sulfur-tinged vapor. The miner, Jax Veld, was an anomaly, a civilian who'd turned a Dralethian boarding party into a line item on a spreadsheet. The warborn clans had crushed species for millennia under the weight of their forge. Fleets, yet this lone human had countered them not with warships, but legal precedent. His comms officer stiffened as new data scrolled across the tactical display. Warlord, the Iron Resolve, just entered the Terran border zone. Their comms are broadcasting something unusual. The feed resolved into a looping transmission, a human female in a crisp uniform, standing before a row of identical shield generators. Colonel Jessica Chen's smile was as sharp as a plasma cutter. Attention Dralethian High Command, per Galactic Trade Statute. Phase B, unattempted salvage, claims expire in phase standard cycles. These units will be auctioned to the highest bidder, unless reclaimed with proof of ownership. A choked growl erupted from Drax's vents. The humans weren't just billing them, they were selling their own stolen tech back to them. Vexus' ocular implants dimmed in realization. I've turned our salvage doctrine into a business model. Outside the viewports, the station's forges roared, their glow painting the warlord's face in hellish light. Somewhere in the void, a lone freighter sailed onward, its shields humming, its logs still counting, still winning. Draxus activated the fleet beacon. The game had changed, so would the rules. Section Fey. The fine print always wins. The Dralethian fleet emerged from warp in a storm of molten light, their angular hulls carving through the void like blades fresh from the forge. Admiral Draxus watched the tactical display with satisfaction. 12 battlecruisers, their segmented armor pulsing with orange, red energy, surrounded the drifting human freighter. The Iron Resolve sat motionless, its battered hull still glowing from the last shield impact. Draxus' mandibles twitched in anticipation. The humans had played their game well, but now the hunt ended. All vessels, lock tractor beams, he commanded, the words vibrating through the command deck's copper-plated conduits. Disable their engines. I want that ship intact. The Iron Resolve didn't react. No evasive maneuvers, no panic transmissions, just silence. Vexus, standing at the sensor array, felt the first prickle of unease. Admiral, their shield matrix is still active. Draxus' ocular implants flickered. Impossible. Their power core was disabled 3 volleys ago. Vexus' claws tightened around the console. Not their power core, ours. Inside the Iron Resolve, Corporal Mitchell Langford exhaled slowly, his fingers resting on the console's final command prompt. The Dralethian fleet filled the view screen, their brutalist warships haloed in the crimson glow of their own plasma forges. Colonel Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "You sure about this, Corporal?" Langford smirked. "Ma'am, they're using our shield tech, and we licensed it." He tapped the screen. A single line of text flared across every Dralethian vessel's command interface. Warning, unauthorized shield module detected. Hostile engagement voids leasing agreement. Deactivation imminent. The Dralethian fleet convulsed. One by one, their shields flickered. Not from damage, but from something far worse. A denial, the orange-red energy fields that had defied human railgun fire, that had weathered plasma storms, now dissolved like embers in vacuum. Vex's console erupted in alerts. Admiral, the shield harmonics. They're rejecting our command protocols. Draxus roared, molten spittle hissing against the deck. Override it. We can't. Vex's voice was raw. The system recognizes our signatures as pirates. It's locking us out. A new transmission cut through the chaos. Colonel Chen's face filled the view screen, her smile razor, thin. Admiral Draxus. Per Galactic Trade Statute, Phi B subsection, Phi unlicensed replication of patented defense systems carries a penalty of immediate system revocation. She tilted her head. You should have read the fine print. Outside, the Iron Resolve's engines flared to life, and the human freighter charged. The Dralethians had expected desperation. They had expected surrender. They had not expected receipts. Langford gripped the controls as the Iron Resolve plowed into the nearest battlecruiser, its reinforced prow shearing through unshielded armor like a knife through foil. Alarms wailed as the Dralethian formation shattered, ships scrambling to evade, not human weapons, but their own stolen fail-safes. Vexus watched in horror as the fleet's tactical display dissolved into chaos. Half their vessels were dead in the void, their systems frozen by the very shields they'd thought invincible. Draxus' voice was a guttural snarl. How? Vexus stared at the scrolling legalese on her screen. The clauses, the sub-clauses, the human obsession with contingencies. They didn't just sell us the shields, she whispered. They weaponized the contract, and in the dark, the Iron Resolve sailed on, its shields humming, its logs still counting, still winning. Section Phi, Kess Epiphany. The data logs glowed crimson in the dim light of Vex's private chamber, casting jagged reflections across the angular copper plating of the walls. Her claws hovered over the console, trembling. She had expected battle records, tactical readouts, the crude, desperate stratagems of a species clinging to survival. Instead, she found receipts, not just transaction records, legal documents, meticulously filed, cross-referenced, stamped with the insignia of something called the Interstellar Trade Compliance Bureau. Her secondary heart stuttered as she scrolled. The human Langford wasn't just a miner, he was military discharged. Yes, officially listed as a civilian contractor. But the patterns were there, buried in the logs like landmines. The way Head timed the shield transfers to the millisecond. The way Head routed payments through 17 shell corporations before they reached Dralethian accounts. The way every single transaction included clauses so dense with subtext, they might as well have been poetry. And then she saw it. A single line buried in a subfolder marked Archive Phi Operation Stingray Sky. Asset L. Phi confirms target acquisition. Proceed to Phase Phi litigation. Vex's breath hissed between her teeth. This wasn't theft. It was a sting operation. The humans had let the Dralethians steal their shields. Dead allowed the infiltration, the reverse, engineering, the arrogant assumption of superiority, all while Langford, Corporal Langford, she realized now, had quietly, methodically, legally ensured that every piece of tech they'd taken was still, technically, human property. And the moment the Dralethians had activated those shields in combat, they'd triggered a lawsuit. Vex's claws dug into the console, sending sparks skittering across the dark metal. The Iron Resolve wasn't just a ship, it was a witness. Every kilojoule of energy it absorbed, every attack it countered, was being logged, time-stamped, notarized. For the trade courts, for the galactic arbitration panels, for the war crimes tribunals, Dralethian doctrine had no answer for this. They understood sieges, understood scorched earth, and overwhelming firepower. But this was a battle fought in ink, in clauses, in the cold, patient bureaucracy of a species that had spent millennia weaponizing paperwork. Outside, the battle raged. The iron resolve carved through another cruiser, its stolen shields flaring orange, red against the void. Inside, Vexus stared at the screen, at the scrolling lines of legalese that were dismantling her fleet faster than any plasma lance. And for the first time in her life, the Dralethian commander felt something unfamiliar. Not of death. The Dralethian flagship Molten Vengeance hung in the void like a jagged obsidian blade, its angular hull pulsing with the dull glow of overheating plasma conduits. Warlord Draltel's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne, the metal groaning under the pressure. His secondary eyes, 6 in total, flickered with erratic crimson light, a physiological tell of unchecked fury. Before him, the holographic display painted a nightmare in molten orange and void. Black the human vessel, that damned shield, wall of scavenged metal and audacity, refused to die. Worse, it recorded every shot fired, every energy signature, every violation of the Cathari trade accords scrolled across its encrypted broadcasts, bleeding into open channels where neutral factions could intercept them. Draltel's mandibles twitched. This was not war. This was litigation by artillery. His tactical officer, a younger Dralethian, whose carapace still bore the fresh scorch marks of their last engagement, hesitated before speaking. Warlord, the human ship's shielding is adapting. Our plasma lances are irrelevant. Draltel's voice was a furnace blast, the air shimmering with heat distortion. His primary eyes locked onto the iron resolve, its battered hull now wreathed in a flickering aurora of stolen Dralethian shield tech. It shouldn't have been possible. Their engineers had sworn human systems couldn't interface with Dralethian plasma cores without catastrophic failure. Yet there it was, and worse, the humans had improved it. A low, grinding noise built in Draltel's thorax, the sound of a predator realizing the prey had fangs. The iron resolve wasn't just surviving. It was learning. Every impact, every near, miss, every failed assault was being cataloged, reverse, engineered, used. His claws flexed. There was only one solution now. Activate the forge maw, he commanded. The bridge crew froze, their exoskeletons locking in instinctive dread. The forge maw was a last resort, a weapon so volatile it had been banned by 3 separate interstellar treaties. It didn't just destroy, it unmade, reducing matter to its base quantum particles in a storm of artificial singularity. The tactical officer's voice was a whisper. Warlord, if we deploy it here, the humans have left us no choice. Draltel roared. They dare to wield our own laws against us, to document our actions like some accountant's ledger. His secondary eyes burned. Let them record this. Deep within the molten vengeance, ancient systems awoke. The forge maw was not a weapon so much as a blasphemy, a relic from an era when the Dralethians had torn holes in reality itself to break their enemies. Its activation sequence sent tremors through the ship, the deck plates vibrating like the throat of a waking beast. On the iron resolve, alarms shrieked. Colonel Jessica Chen didn't need the diagnostics to know what was coming. The energy spike on her screens was unmistakable, a screaming, jagged line that tore through every threshold of known weapon yields. Mitchell Langford, his hands steady on the shield controls, didn't look up. They're really doing it. The mad bastards are going to crack open a singularity in the middle of a trade lane. Chen exhaled. Then she smiled, because the iron resolve wasn't just a ship. It was a witness, and witnesses, in human history, had a habit of surviving. As the forge maw charged, its containment field straining, the iron resolve's shields did something impossible. They pulsed, not defensively, not randomly, but in pattern. Across the sector, every listening post, every trade hub, Every neutral observatory suddenly lit up with the same transmission, an open broadcast of the Forge Maw's activation codes, its energy signatures, its war crime in progress. Dralethian's mandibles parted in horror. The humans hadn't just recorded their attacks. They'd hacked their weapons, and now the entire galaxy was watching. The Iron Resolve's shields pulsed again, a rhythmic throb of defiance against the Forge Maw's gathering storm. Each oscillation wasn't just a defensive measure, it was a countdown, a metronome ticking toward the moment the Dralethians would realize their mistake. Mitchell Langford's fingers danced across the shield controls, his breathing steady despite the sweat beating at his temples. The console's readouts flickered with warnings, containment breaches, gravitational distortions, the Forge Maw's singularity core, swelling like a star about to birth a black hole. But the shield harmonics held, because they weren't just holding, they were singing. Across the bridge, Colonel Jessica Chen watched the tactical display with the calm of a woman who had already won. The Dralethians had assumed human shields were crude barriers, reactive and blunt. But the Iron Resolve's shielding wasn't just armor, it was a resonance chamber, tuned to the exact frequency of the Forge Maw's containment field. Every pulse of the shields wasn't just absorbing energy, it was recording it. And now, the entire galaxy was listening. Dralethian's command spire aboard the Forge Maw shuddered as the containment alarms blared. His copper-plated claws dug into the armrests of his throne, the molten veins in the deck, plating pulsing erratically as the ship's core destabilized. The holographic feeds around him flickered with incoming transmissions, neutral trade consortiums, rival empires, even the Dralethian High Forge Council, all demanding explanation for the unauthorized singularity deployment. Vashdor. His scientist's crest flared in panic, hissed through clenched mandibles. The humans, they didn't just record us, they mirrored us. Their shields are feeding back our own containment protocols. Dralethian's ocular lenses dilated, the orange glow of his irises dimming with dawning horror. The Iron Resolve wasn't just surviving the Forge Maw's assault, it was using it. Every joule of energy the Dralethians poured into their weapon was being siphoned, analyzed, and broadcast, proof of their violation of the Accords of Molten Accord. And worse, far worse, the humans had timed it perfectly. The Forge Maw couldn't shut down the singularity now, not without catastrophic backlash. Mitchell exhaled sharply as another tremor rocked the Iron Resolve. The deck plates groaned, but the shield matrix held, its harmonics locking into phase with the Forge Maw's dying throes. He could feel the Dralethian ships panic in the way their energy signatures spiked, frantic, uncoordinated. "Colonel," he said, voice low, "they're trying to abort." Chen didn't smile. She didn't need to, too late. Because the Iron Resolve shields weren't just a wall, they were a dam, and the Forge Maw was about to drown in its own flood. Aboard the Dralethian vessel, Vashdor's claws scrambled across the console, his voice a raw scrape of desperation. "The core, it's fusing with their shield frequency. We can't sever the link." Dralethian rose, his armored carapace vibrating with the ship's death rattle. The humans had done the impossible. They hadn't just turned their shields into a weapon. They'd turned them into a judgment. And as the Forge Maw's singularity spiraled out of control, its own containment protocols unraveling in real time across 1,000 galactic feeds, Dralethian understood, too late, the true nature of human warfare. They didn't fight to conquer, they fought to witness. And now, the entire galaxy would see the Dralethians burn section. Faye, the receipts have teeth. The Forge Maw's death throes painted the void in molten orange. Its singularity core, once the pinnacle of Dralethian engineering, had become a cascading failure, its containment fields shredded by the Iron Resolve's repurposed shields. The humans hadn't just broken the warship's spine. They'd forced it to gnaw on itself, the feedback loop consuming the vessel from within in a spectacle of brutal symmetry. Across 1,000 galactic feeds, the Dralethian flagship's demise unfolded in real time, not as a dignified retreat, not as a warrior's end, but as a receipt, a detailed, itemized ledger of every lie, every coerced treaty, every species ground beneath the Dralethian war machine's treads. And the galaxy watched. Aboard the Iron Resolve, Colonel Chen exhaled, as the last of the Forge Maw's debris cooled into twisted slag. The bridge crew was silent, their faces lit by the dying embers of their enemy on the viewscreen. Not with triumph, not with bloodlust, with satisfaction, Mitchell Langford's fingers hovered over his console, the last of the data packets still streaming outward. "Alliance channels are flooded," he murmured. "Every species they've strong, armed in the last 3 cycles, just got their proof. Full ledgers, coercion logs, even the invoices for the weapons they used to enforce tribute." Chen allowed herself a single slow nod. The Dralethians had thought humans fought like cornered beasts. They were wrong. Humans fought like accountants. Dralethian High Command Warlord Kes Moulton, orange eyes flickered as the reports poured in. The Forge Maw's destruction was catastrophic, but it was the aftermath that truly scorched. The human data packets had teeth. Every transaction, every backroom threat, every broken treaty laid bare in meticulous, undeniable detail. Allied vessels, once bristling with loyalty, now hung motionless in the void. The Thren Collective had already severed comms. The Viscari Armada was recalling its fleets. Even the mercenary clans, those who'd thrived under Dralethian patronage, were suddenly conspicuously silent. Vashdor's claws trembled over his terminal. "They're suing us," he rasped, the words foreign and foul on his tongue. "The humans, they've filed a class action claim with the Galactic Arbitration Council on behalf of all exploited species." Kes carapace plates ground together. A lawsuit? A legal maneuver? It was absurd. It was human. And it was working. The aftermath, the Dralethian Empire didn't collapse in fire. It didn't shatter under bombardment or kneel to a conqueror's boot. It unraveled. Planetary governors, their own ledgers now exposed, scrambled to distance themselves. Trade consortiums froze assets. Even the forges of Draleth Prime, monuments to industrial might, fell silent as the first sanctions hit. And through it all, the humans watched, not with the predatory glee the Dralethians had expected, but with the quiet focus of archivists, ensuring every record was correct, every decimal in place, every receipt accounted for. Because humanity's greatest weapon had never been its shields, or its railguns, or even its terrifying adaptability. It was their paperwork, and the galaxy would never underestimate it again. Next section setup. The Dralethian remnants attempt a desperate counterattack, only to find their own weapons turning against them as human legal warfare infects their systems. The Dralethian command hub was a cathedral of molten steel and flickering orange plasma, its towering consoles humming with the last vestiges of imperial authority. High Commander Draltel stood before the war table, his segmented armor plates shifting uneasily as he reviewed the reports. The once proud forges of his people now lay dormant, their great smelters choked by sanctions and frozen supply lines. And yet, the humans had not fired a single shot across the table. Vashdor, his chief scientist, tapped a clawed digit against the holodisplay. The projection flickered, corrupted like everything else. "They didn't hack our systems," he muttered, his voice a low, grinding rasp. "They audited them." Draltel's mandibles twitched. He had expected boarding parties, orbital strikes, the thunder of human war machines. Instead, they had received spreadsheets. Spreadsheets, meticulously itemized lists of every breached regulation, every unpaid tariff, every overlooked safety protocol buried deep in the Dralethian industrial code. The humans hadn't just exposed their corruption. They had weaponized bureaucracy itself. A chime sounded from the console. The latest transmission from the Terran Oversight Committee scrolled across the screen, its clinical legalese a stark contrast to the Dralethians' molten aesthetic. Per Galactic Trade Statute HFY. Subsection D, your continued operation of unlicensed plasma, Forges constitutes. Dralethian snarled and silenced the feed. Enough. He turned to the tactical display, where the remnants of his fleet flickered like dying embers. We still have ships. We still have weapons. Vashdor hesitated. Commander, the humans have already locked our targeting systems. Their legal subroutines overwrote our fire. Control protocols. The moment we attempt an unauthorized strike, our own railguns will disable themselves. Dralethian's claws dug into the table, scoring deep furrows in the metal. This was not war. This was accounting. On the other side of the system, Colonel Jessica Chen watched the data streams with quiet satisfaction. Beside her, Corporal Mitchell Langford exhaled sharply. They're not even fighting back. Chen didn't smile. They can't. Every system they rely on, logistics, communications, even their damn payroll, runs on infrastructure we just legally annexed. Langford shook his head. And Jax, the miner who started all this. Chen's gaze flicked to a secondary feed. The man in question was already walking away from the wreckage of the corporate black site. His posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. He had refused medals, refused commendations. When pressed, he had only shrugged, just balancing the books. Now, as the feed tracked him, Chen noticed something else. His path didn't lead to a transport, or a bar, or any of the usual haunts of a man who had just toppled an empire. It led to another black site. Langford caught it too. He's not stopping, is he? Chen didn't answer. She didn't need to. Some men fought with guns. Some with words. He fought with receipts. The collapse of the Dralethian warlord's empire did not come with the thunder of orbital bombardments or the searing flash of plasma lances. It came in the form of data packets, thousands of them. Dralethian, once a conqueror whose name had been whispered in fear across 3 systems, now sat in the ruins of his command hub, watching the holographic projections flicker and die one by one. His war machine, built on brutalist architecture, molten steel conduits, and the unshakable belief in force, had been dismantled not by fleets, but by legal injunctions. Vashdor, the scientist who had once sneered at human weakness, now stood frozen before the tactical display, his copper-plated fingers trembling over the feed. The screen showed no enemy warships, no invading armies, just lines of text scrolling endlessly, contracts nullified, supply chains severed, financial reserves frozen. They are not even here, Vashdor hissed, his voice a crackling distortion of disbelief. Dralethian's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. His empire had been built on conquest, on the unassailable might of his dreadnoughts, and the fear they inspired. But humanity had not fought him on that battlefield. They had fought him in courts he did not know existed, with laws he had never considered relevant. A new alert pulsed on the main display, another subsidiary seized, another fleet grounded by Leon enforcement. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had simply proven ownership, and Jax, the lone miner who had started it all, was still moving. Colonel Jessica Chen watched the feeds with something between awe and grim satisfaction. The Dralethians had expected war. They had prepared for sieges, for boarding actions, for the kind of bloodshed their kind thrived on. Instead, they got receipts. Langford exhaled, rubbing his temple. This isn't warfare. This is accountancy. Chen finished, and it was working. Across the sector, other factions, pirates, mercenaries, even rival warlords, were taking notes. The humans had not just defeated the Dralethians, they had humiliated them, not by outgunning them, but by outmaneuvering them in a battlefield the aliens had never even realized existed. Vashdor's mandibles twitched in a snarl. This is dishonorable. Dralethian did not answer. His empire was crumbling, not because it had been broken, but because it had been repossessed. And somewhere out there, a lone miner was still walking. Chen allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Some men fought with guns. He fought with paperwork. The data packet arrived at Kess terminal with all the fanfare of a silent detonation. No alarms, no flashing glyphs, just a single encrypted file blinking patiently in the corner of his display, like a forgotten ember in a dying forge. Kess hesitated. The war was over. The Dralethian Empire, once a molten titan of industry and conquest, had been reduced to a debtor state, its fleets grounded by liens, its forges cold under embargo, its warlords humbled not by firepower but by fiscal strangulation. The humans had not just won, they had rewritten the rules of engagement in ink instead of blood. And now this, he opened the file. What unfolded across his screen was not a battle report, not a treaty, not even a demand. It was a meme, a crude, pixelated image of a Terran shield wall. Not of steel, but of stacked paperwork, each document bristling with red stamps and signatures. At its center, a single phrase in blocky human script: audit them harder next time. Attached was a note, short, simple, paid in full. Jax's Kess stared. Then, against all reason, his carapace vibrated with something dangerously close to laughter. The Dralethians had spent centuries perfecting war. They had forged plasma lances that could melt continents, engineered dreadnoughts that could crack moons, bred warriors who thrived in the heat of annihilation. A lone Terran miner, armed with nothing but bureaucracy and spite, had dismantled them, not by matching their brutality, but by weaponizing something far more terrifying. Patience, Vashdor would have called it cowardice. Dralethian would have called it heresy. Kess called it elegant. He leaned back in his command throne, the orange glow of his terminal casting long shadows across the angular industrial bulkheads of his ship. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, the humans were still moving, still scheming, still turning the galaxy's expectations inside out. Jax was probably already filling out another form. Kess saved the file. Then, with deliberate slowness, he forwarded it to the entire Dralethian High Command. Let them choke on the irony. The war was over. The lesson had just begun. Section Aftermath. The transmission rippled through the Dralethian network like a slow-acting toxin. Kess watched the first reactions unfold in real time, flickers of disbelief, bursts of static-laden fury, the cold silence of processing. The High Command's channels, usually a cacophony of orders and threats, had gone unnervingly still. Then the first denial came. This is a fabrication. Followed by the second. The Terran vermin lacked the wit for such deception. And then, inevitably, the third. Kess. Ix has been compromised. He almost laughed. Of course. The Dralethian mind was a forge, unyielding, uncreative, incapable of bending. To admit that a single human had outmaneuvered them with paperwork would require acknowledging a flaw in their very essence. Better to declare treason than face the truth. But the damage was done. Deep in the bowels of the industrial foundry ships, where molten metal hissed and war machines took shape, whispers slithered through the ranks. The lower castes, engineers, laborers, those who had spent centuries hammering obedience into their bones, paused. Just for a moment, just long enough to wonder, if a human could unravel an empire with a form, what else might they undo? Kess leaned forward, claws tapping against his console. The High Command would purge the data, execute the doubters, and bury the incident in the fires of their forges. But data, once released, had a way of surviving. In hidden drives, in stolen glances, in the quiet spaces between orders and humanity. Humanity would keep filing. He opened a new transmission. Not to the Dralethians. Not to his own kind. To a certain Terran mining outpost, flagged with a familiar, infuriating identifier. Jax. He typed. Next time, use a carbon copy. Outside, the void remained indifferent, but somewhere, in the dark, a bureaucrat grinned.